Again, it's been a bit of a week for yours truly, and with that in mind, and given all of the, well, generally distressing news that we encounter these days, I thought I just might take a minute to kind of get down to something a little more fundamental, a little more foundational. And the title for this week was gonna be probably something amazing, but I decided to go something a little different because I'm a single man of a certain age and you know economic bracket and everything, and I'm dating, and man, it's a challenge, demoralizing almost. However, and this is what kind of inspired me for today. Sorry, I'm a little kind of pulling myself together here. Dating is supposed to be hard because if it's there's no effort to attain something, you'll never appreciate it. So that's kind of the nucleus of what I'm going to be talking about today. And I say that because I've had more than a few dates recently where I was excited to go, and then you sit down with that person and it just doesn't quite click, and that's okay. Sometimes that's just how it goes. Um, but the obverse of that is that I might meet somebody and I want to spend more time with them, just kind of figure it out. And I found myself in this spiral when I had been seeing this woman for about a month, and she was, not to sound crass, but kind of hot to trot, and it was, flattering to me because, it's nice to feel wanted, but I didn't have a strong, like, desire to move forward. It's not so much about attraction, it's that I didn't really feel a connection. Attraction is easy, at least for me. Connection, on the other hand, something that most of us don't really think about, that's a little harder to kind of lock down. And so when I was considering what I was going to say to this nice woman, who, she's nice, she's lovely, she's very nice, but she's not for me, is I didn't really want to hurt her feelings, but at the same time, like, it's not really fair for me to be in a relationship that I don't want to be in to spare somebody else's feelings. Which is to say that, you have to kind of make choices that are, put the onus on you. You can't always get away with just kind of leading people on. And when I was young, I had this really mean spirited habit of kind of keeping a girlfriend as kind of like a contingency plan so I wasn't lonely while I was looking for somebody else. And I'm not really proud of doing that in my younger years, but I learned a lot from it, mostly that it's okay to look for the thing that you actually want. Just don't hurt anybody while you're doing it. So just there's that, which is kind of hard to avoid because in any breakup, regardless of how, the edge case is that neither of you were that invested. So when you decide to go your separate ways, neither of you really got dirty in the meantime. And I mean dirty like you get knocked down and you have to pick yourself up, not dirty like the fun kind, which, may happen, but that's none of my business. Point being, dating is supposed to be hard because finally meeting that person that you really want to have in your life needs to feel like it's earned. And it's not to say that you have to drag yourself through the worst relationships ever to find the one good one. It's just to say that it's okay to not feel all of the feelings that you're expected to feel. And this occurred to me because our modern dating landscape is really weird in that we have these apps that we're supposed to simplify things and really, winnow it down to, like, I like the way this person, I like their head shape, I want to go talk to them. And kind of, I don't want to say cut out all the middle ground, but definitely remove a lot of the traction between you and your, hopeful paramour at some point. But I think the real problem is that the dating apps have sort of set us up to fail in that you can't really you can't boil a whole person, a whole beautiful human being down to 6 pictures and, oh, we'll call it 7 sentences and like a series of stat lines. You just can't do that. There's that wonderful line, I forget if it was Whitman or whoever, but that's like, you contain multitudes. A person contains multitudes that are beyond a dating profile. And I think that that's the problem that I'm running into, is that I don't know the person that I want, but I'm willing to experience other people in that quest because I'm a ridiculous romantic person, as was described to me by a good friend of mine. And for me, I'm willing to meet and to interact with a ton of different people, many of whom I maybe wouldn't have considered in that pursuit. And I think the trap that a lot of people fall into is that they feel like they should be able to order their partner from like a catalog, have a bunch of check boxes and so on and so forth. And they frame it as having standards. I view it as trying to armor themselves against future heartbreak. And anyone who knows me well enough knows that I have this line that I really love called "be an exposed nerve in the universe." And that is, you have to kind of open yourself up to feeling things that you don't anticipate on the chance that you might feel something that is amazing. And that's can be a little emotionally reckless, to frame it one way, but on the other hand, it's allowed me to make friends and have experiences and create things that I probably wouldn't have been capable of doing otherwise. And I think that that's what I'm getting at when I say dating is supposed to be hard. You have to go through a bunch of people that don't fit until you find the person that's going to fit into your life. And I think we'd all be a little bit better off if we were a little less defensively minded in our dating. And I can only really speak to this from my perspective, as king of the mediums. But it's been my experience that the standards are strange. I keep seeing this line pop up on, I don't know, probably 70% of women's profiles. A man who knows how to plan. Like, have the standards fallen so low that the simplest thing is making a plan as to where you're taking that woman for dinner or coffee or whatever? Is that just beyond your onus? Because if so, ladies, I'm sorry that you've had such a parade of disappointing specimens that having a guy make a simple plan seems like a real win. Because that to me is just deeply upsetting. So, fellas, have a plan in mind before you take a woman out. Think about where you want to feel comfortable, where you think she might feel comfortable, or you find someplace in the middle. The last date I went on, I went to a bar I'd never been to before with a woman I didn't know because neither of us had been there, and I thought it'd be cool to go to a place and try it out with somebody new, kind of have like a buddy on my elbow. And we had a great chat, but reviewing the tape in my head, I can kind of see where, now here we are 2 days later, why I didn't get a text back or call back or whatever. Some jokes really set you up for failure, and this one wasn't hugely inappropriate, but in retrospect, I feel like that's probably where it all went awry, and that's a whole other story. Point being, having a plan is easy. Do the work. I have this other little chestnut that I like to pull out when mentoring, young men who are trying to just find their person. Put in as much effort into yourself and your presentation as you expect that woman to put in for you, or that person, whichever. Again, pursue your people, whatever interlocking genitals they may have. That's your business. I like to think a lot of my advice and musings could be fairly gender agnostic, so we're not going to get too carried away. Ultimately, dating is a challenge these days, primarily because we've been kind of tricked into that marketing business where we feel like we're entitled to exactly the thing that we want. But here's the big but, the radioactive asterisk that comes along with it. Your person, is never who you want when you think you want it. It's the person that you need when you need it the most. Which isn't to say you can't have certain standards or certain expectations, and that's fine. But keep in mind that your standards and your expectations are not on the other person to fulfill. You need to accept that the other person. You're there to, you basically have to find where your edges line up and they fit together, because otherwise you're just going to be setting yourself up for disappointment and maybe even some bitterness when that person doesn't behave in the way that you want them to or that you expect them to, because again, we all contain multitudes. You're not going to get a brand new person first second date to match all of your expectations. You know why? Because they don't live in your head. They don't understand you. You don't understand them either. Maybe be a little bit more willing to entertain further dates just to feel it out. I feel like we more often than not go on one date or go on one meeting, go for drinks, coffee, whatever, and because we don't have fireworks right out the gate, we assume that it's a dud. Some of the best relationships I've had were built off of a completely, I don't want to call it monotone, but a rather underwhelming first few experiences. And eventually you kind of build up to those things. Fireworks are your reward, they're not like the price of admission. So, what I'm getting at is don't be afraid to give somebody a chance. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Always be willing to hear somebody out. And for crying out loud, have a plan. And I mean, like, not like grand romantic gestures plan, just a plan in general, like a light plan. And this includes, how do you get home safe? How do you make that other person feel safe? Which I hate that we have to kind of have that in the background of all these conversations. And it really breaks my heart as a man of a certain type that just wants people to feel comfortable around him, that I've learned that unfortunately our lovely women friends have a tendency to factor in their personal safety in a lot of their first meetings, and that shouldn't be the case. If you're a good man, and that sounds really tacky, or if you're a quality gentleman, you should not put people off. They should not ever have concern for their safety around you, which kind of goes without saying. Point being, sorry, dating is going to be hard, and it's going to suck until it doesn't suck anymore. And that's okay. Because if you want to find that person, you got to do the work. We've unfortunately gotten really used to this, I call it the Amazon prospect, where you jump on Amazon, you punch in your search, you get a crap ton of options. Usually the first one matches the search criteria the closest, but the quality might be really low, but you can get it in 2 days and then it's perfect and then you're fine. The problem is a person can't be Amazoned. So maybe just give yourself a break. If the date doesn't go well, that's okay. Go out and get another one. Don't overinvest too early, but be willing to invest nonetheless. I guess willingness is your superpower with the whole dating business. So that's what we're gonna. That's kind of what that's the point. That's the whole thesis of it. And I'm kind of rambling here because I got all of my salient points out, and I'm trying to think of a good way to wrap this up so it doesn't seem like I've just battered on, the problems with dating. And there are a lot of them, and the internet, was supposed to democratize us and connect us, and now we just feel more alienated, more cut off, and because we have this constant bombardment of information, generally bad news coming in at us, it makes it really hard to make time for the simplest thing as romantic connection, which to me is like the bedrock of community building, because, you build those romantic connections and you build families, and then you interact with other families and you build communities, and it all starts with you finding your person. And that's really important, because if all you do is you feel bitter and alone, you getting more bitter and isolating yourself more isn't going to help anything. It's just going to continue to compound this unfortunate tendency that you don't deserve to be happy with somebody else. And some people are perfectly happy being alone. Great, good on them. I'm not one of those people. Most people aren't that sort of person. So go out, please go out, actually go out. If you are a complete internet person, cool, great. But you know what you get when you go out in the great wide world and you go to bars and coffee shops and all this other stuff? You get those unknown variables. I see this other line on women's dating profiles a lot. Let's go on adventures. No, what they really mean is let's have an interaction that is not completely scripted. Because that's where you find that person that really sticks with you, when you can go through something with no script, no expectations. It doesn't go according to any predetermined map or plan or itinerary or whatever, and you laugh and you enjoy it, and then you have a memory. Those people that say they want adventures, really, they just want an interaction that doesn't feel manufactured. So women that say they want a man with a plan, they just want a guy that puts in enough effort to feel like they want to be there without putting all of the agency on the woman to make all the decisions, because they shouldn't have to. I mean, that's like a third date thing where you start compromising in the middle, but that's a whole other video, and maybe we'll have one of these days. I'm not a dating expert. I've just been around for a minute, gone on quite a few, had more than a few long, short, mostly failed, a few fairly successful, but ultimately short lived relationships. And these are the things that I've learned. So, to close out, dating is hard. It sucks. And that's okay. But it will be worth it, provided you open yourself up to finding that person at the cost of maybe getting a little scuffed up along the way. Because you know what happens? You can either get ground down or you can get polished. Ultimately, that's what it's about. Taking off your rough edges so you can shine bright enough for that person to find you. That's really what you want. So, that's this week. I'll be back next week. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about next week, but it could be fun. Do take it easy. Feel free to drop me a like or subscribe or whatever. I'm going to try to do one of these vlogs every week talking about, things that have happened in my life, things I'm working on. My H.P. Lovecraft project is moving along better this week. I have some challenges in that, but we'll talk about that as we get closer to that finish line. In either case, I'll see you next time.